The pension clerk lowered the forfeited stamp toward Marilla Wynn's survivor file, but Winnifred Saye slid her gloved hand over the notice before ink could strike. She earned that benefit before she remarried, Winnifred said. Moonlight touched the silver token on the clerk's tray. It spun once, rang like a tiny bell, and rolled across Marilla's wedding threshold to rest at her feet. If the law said her remarriage ended the benefit, why did the pension itself follow her home? Marilla stood in the registry doorway in her plain blue wedding dress, one hand still holding a new household key, the other pressed to the pocket where her unpaid apothecary bill hid. Her first husband had paid into the survivor fund for 26 years. Her new husband, a kind carpenter with 2 rented rooms and no savings, could not buy the lung draft she needed by Monday. Pension Minister Roland Fell stepped from behind the benefits counter. A sentimental token reaction. Nothing more. Widow Wynne entered a new household at dawn. His Majesty's ruling is clear. Wolf King Casimir Thorn stood near the registry arch, black royal coat fastened with silver clasps, dark gray eyes ringed with silver-blue wolf light beneath the open moon window. At 25, he looked too controlled, too handsome, too dangerous to be only a signature on a cruel rule. Yet his judgment had upheld remarriage forfeitures. After Roland claimed new marriage proved new support. Now Marilla's medicine money was being taken before the wedding flowers wilted. Winnifred faced him. Your ruling is punishing a woman for surviving grief. Casimir's jaw tightened. Minister Fell advised that continued payments after remarriage drained support from widows with no household at all. Then he turned an earned benefit into charity and called love evidence against need. Roland lifted the forfeiture notice. Policy distinguishes dependents from completed mourning. If a widow forms a new household, survivor support no longer belongs to the old one. The support was registered to Marilla, Winnifred said. Not to her grief. Casimir looked at the token lying against the threshold board. What does the token prove? Winnifred answered with the precision that had kept poorer women alive inside ledgers designed to lose them. Only that Marilla remains the registered beneficiary of value completed before remarriage. It cannot calculate arrears, prove motive, decide transfer rights, or open the pension vault. Roland smiled. Then it proves no payable claim. It proves enough to stop a forfeiture until records are checked. The clerk's stamp still hovered near her hand. Winnifred did not move. She was 22, trained in survivor benefit law, contribution histories, death dates, household labor valuation, and arrears objections. She knew the difference between a gift and a wage deducted for decades. Roland turned to Casimir. If one remarried widow keeps a benefit because her token rolls prettily, every penalty will be challenged by women already housed elsewhere. Marilla whispered, I am housed in 2 rooms with a roof leak. No statement without counsel, Winnifred said softly. Roland's eyes sharpened. Mistress Saye now coaches claimants against the crown. She prevents hunger from being mistaken for consent. Casimir stepped closer. His royal wolf shadow spread along the registry floor, midnight black with a silver-blue mane and a glowing crescent at its throat. It lowered beside the token, watching the silver coin's path without touching it. The restraint mattered. It did not repair the ruling. Show the contribution record, Casimir said. Roland opened a polished file. The active record shows remarriage this morning, forfeiture effective immediately, and a new household support declaration pending. Winnifred did not take the file. Produce the original contribution book and token registration. In archive order, Roland said, not at the demand of an examiner interfering with royal policy. Winnifred felt the trap close. If she certified forfeiture, Marilla lost Monday's medicine, and any arrears would flow into reserve. If she refused, Roland could suspend her, and warn other widows that consulting her delayed their appeals. She chose Marla. I refuse certification, Winnifred said. Record a threshold contradiction, token number, beneficiary name, death date, remarriage time, and forfeiture notice preserved. The clerk looked to Roland. Casimir said, "Record it." Roland's expression barely changed, but his hand went to a sealed packet at the counter. Your Majesty should know Mistress Saye's authority is under review for encouraging remarried widows to retain double support. Marla flinched. Double support? I have not been paid once. Winnifred held the threshold line. The word double is easy when no one counts the first household's work. Casimir's eyes found hers, and attraction moved there, unwanted. She felt it like heat near a locked door. He was beautiful enough to tempt pity, powerful enough to make pity dangerous. Hold processing until sunset, he said. Sunset gives the minister hours to move tokens and files, Winnifred answered. Seal the forfeiture tray now. Roland laughed. She speaks as though she rules the registry. No, Winnifred said. I speak as though remarriage is not a death certificate. Behind the clerk, 2 silver tokens in the forfeiture tray began to spin toward women waiting outside the registry door. The 2 spinning tokens struck the tray wall with bright, accusing rings. Women outside the registry door drew back as if silver could burn them. One token tipped over the sill and rolled to a broad-shouldered widow in a brown work dress. The other spun in a tight circle before a pale woman holding a folded rent notice against her ribs. Names, Winnifred said. Bessie Alder, the first woman whispered. Corinne Pike, said the second. Roland fell, reached for the tray. No one touches pension property. The registered beneficiaries hold their own tokens until review, Winnifred said. Casimir gave the order before Roland could turn the sentence into defiance. Let them hold them. It saved the tokens. It did not save his ruling. Bessie Alder took hers with hands cracked by laundry lye. Corinne Pike began crying without sound because grief had taught her not to attract clerks. By noon, the registry doors carried Roland's warning. Remarried beneficiaries consulting suspended examiner Saye may be reviewed for double support fraud. It did not name hunger. It did not name work. It did not name the dead men whose wages had been deducted year after year. Winnifred led the women across the lane to the vestry room behind Street Ellians, where wedding ribbons still hung from Marla's morning ceremony. She made no speeches about courage. Courage did not buy drafts, rent, or coal. Instead, she drew columns on the back of old bands. Beneficiary name, token number, first spouse death date, contribution period, remarriage date, forfeiture notice, unpaid bill, household labor witness. We are not proving that you deserve pity, she told them. We are proving the value was earned before the new household existed. Marla placed her token beside a bundle of contribution stubs saved in a flour tin. 26 years of weekly deductions, some with her late husband's mark, some with hers because he could not write after a quarry crush mangled his fingers. Bessie Alder produced a death certificate, 2 laundry account books, and a household labor declaration never filed because Roland's clerk had told her remarriage made it irrelevant. Corinne unfolded a rent notice and a token receipt, bearing the same crescent number as the silver coin in her palm. Winnifred worked through them with a small pension token brooch at her collar glinting whenever she leaned close. She matched token numbers to receipts, contribution spans to death dates, and remarriage entries to forfeiture stamps. Her skill was not dramatic. It was the steady rescue of facts from offices that preferred women to be simple. Casimir arrived at the vestry without guards. Every widow stiffened. Winnifred stepped between him and the table. You may stand beside the hymn cabinet. He looked once at the tokens, once at the women, and took the place she gave him. Minister Fell says evidence gathered here is unreliable. Minister Fell has the originals and a policy that profits from silence. I came to see your method, not remove it. Then your hands stay visible, and you ask no widow a question unless she invites it. His right wrist scar whitened as his fingers opened. Agreed. It was the first useful thing he had given her that did not require trust. Winnifred pointed to Marilla's contribution stubs. Last completed contribution from the first household. 7 years before remarriage. Death date. 4 years before remarriage. Benefit registration. Marilla Wynne, not new husband, not old house, not ministerial reserve. Casimir listened without reaching. The silver-blue light around his eyes dimmed into something less royal and more wounded. If the value was completed then, why was support need used to end it now? That is the question your ruling forgot to ask. Marilla closed her fingers around the new household key. I married Thomas because I wanted to wake up with kindness in the room, not because he had money. No statement without counsel, Winnifred reminded her gently, then looked at Casimir. Hear the harm without harvesting it. He bowed his head once. I hear it. The respect in his voice changed nothing immediate. Marilla still needed medicine by Monday. Bessie's coal cellar had refused more credit. Corinne's rent notice would become removal if her arrears vanished into the forfeiture office. Winnifred wrote those consequences beside the dates because suffering without a timestamp became easy to debate. At dusk, a boy from the registry brought a copy of Marilla's forfeiture notice, thrown through the vestry door with enough force to scatter ribbon cuttings across the floor. Roland's seal marked the fold. Beneath it, in cold ink, was a fraud review warning naming Marilla, Bessie, and Corinne. Winnifred pinned the warning to the hem cabinet. Now the threat has custody. Then she checked the date. Her breath stopped. Marilla's remarriage had been entered by Registrar Orrin at second bell after the vows. The forfeiture notice was dated first bell, before the registrar had officially recorded the marriage. Winnifred read it again, and the room understood before she spoke. They punished the remarriage before the law knew it existed. Casimir's review summons arrived before morning bread, but Winnifred did not let royal paper decide who entered the room. She brought Marilla Wynne, Bessie Alder, Corinne Pike, their tokens, their claimant-held copies, and Registrar Orrin, whose tired face said he had already been warned that clocks could become dangerous. The pension review chamber was plain by Casimir's order. Scrub table, 2 lamps, no throne, no ministerial portrait, 1 window left uncovered for moon token testing if the hearing ran late. Roland Fell had arrived first. His ledgers were stacked in perfect height order, as if straight edges could make crooked dates honest. Casimir stood when the widows entered. Mistress Saye, you found a notice. Before, record contradiction. I found a woman punished before her marriage legally existed, Winnifred said. We will examine that with witnesses. Roland gave a gentle sigh. Or, with emotion dressed as policy, Winnifred set Marilla's forfeiture notice beside the registrar's entry copy. First bell, second bell. Registrar Orrin cleared his throat. The vows were at dawn, but I entered the remarriage at second bell after the fee was paid and witnessed. Could a pension forfeiture lawfully issue before your entry? She asked. No. Roland opened a blue folder. Unless the beneficiary voluntarily reported new household support in advance. Marilla went balen. Inside the folder lay declarations signed under 3 women's names, Marilla Wynne, Bessie Alder, Corinne Pike. Each stated that remarriage or expected remarriage placed the beneficiary under new household support and that survivor continuation was unnecessary. The signatures were close enough to wound. The language was too clean for hungry women facing clerks. Bessie slapped both cracked hands flat on her skirt. I never wrote that. Roland did not look at her. Many beneficiaries forget forms completed under distress. Winnifred did not touch the declarations. Chain challenge. Who received these? At what counter? Under what notice of rights? With what witness? They were filed in normal course. Normal course is not custody. Casimir looked at the papers, then at Winnifred. His hand moved, stopped, and lowered before she had to correct him. What access do you need? The restraint changed the air by a fraction. Winnifred answered before gratitude could soften the boundary. You may order records opened. You may protect witnesses from retaliation. You may not take custody of widow-held papers, question beneficiaries without counsel, speak my findings, or treat cooperation as forgiveness. Roland's nostrils flared. Your Majesty cannot let a suspended examiner set royal terms. Casimir's voice stayed quiet. I can let a wronged examiner set evidentiary safeguards. Wronged. The word was not enough, but it was better than troublesome. Winnifred nodded once. Then call Hester Vale. The retired contribution collector entered, leaning on a blackthorn stick. Her silver hair was pinned beneath a plain cap, and her eyes were sharp enough to make Roland's junior clerks remember every inkblot of their lives. She had collected payroll deductions when Merla's first husband was young, when Bessie ran laundry from 2 tubs, when Corinne kept accounts for a cooper who paid his pension premiums in copper. Roland rose. Madame Vale is elderly and may confuse memory with loyalty. Hester looked him up and down. Minister, I forgot more honest deductions than you have counted. A widow made a sound that might have become laughter if fear had not swallowed it. Winnifred placed Merla's contribution stubs before Hester. Do you recognize this punch sequence? Yes. Quarry household. 26 years. Final completion stamp pressed 9 years ago, after arrears were cleared. Before remarriage? Before her first husband's death, before remarriage, before that carpenter knew she would one day need a roof. Hester tapped the table. A completed contribution does not unhappen because a widow marries again. Casimir's face tightened. Winnifred moved to Bessie's account. Laundry household? Completed. Her washing paid the premiums when her husband's lungs failed. I recorded labor substitution in the side book. Roland cut in. Side books are not benefit registers. They are why some registers were true, Hester said. Corinne's token receipt came next. Hester identified the old crescent stamp and pressure burr from the retired punch. Complete before death. Complete before remarriage notice. Complete before any new household declaration. Roland laid one of his declarations beside it. And yet she surrendered support. Corinne's lips trembled. I thought it was an address form. Winnifred turned sharply. No more without counsel. Casimir faced Roland. Were these declarations presented as benefit surrender forms? Roland spread his hands. They bear signatures. They bear risk, Winnifred said, not informed choice. Hester's stick struck the floor once. If the originals are in order, show the final contribution stamps. Roland smiled. Some old books are too fragile for handling. Then bring them under glass, Winnifred said. Casimir ordered the archive chest opened. A clerk carried in the first original book, then the second, then the third. Hester bent over them, and for the first time her certainty faltered. Winnifred felt the room lean toward that falter. Hester touched a blank corner where a final crescent should have been. No. Roland's voice softened. Memory is unkind. Hester turned 3 pages, then 4, her hand shaking with anger, not age. I pressed those final stamps myself. Winnifred stepped beside her. Which files? Hester looked at Merla, Bessie, Corinne. and then at the closed archive shelves behind Roland. Several forfeiture books are missing the final contribution stamps I put there with my own hand. Hester Vale's accusation left the review chamber too quiet for court business. Winnifred did not let Roland fill that quiet first. Seal the opened books under witness glass. No page leaves this room. No clerk trims, dries, repairs, or replaces a sheet. Casimir gave the order before Roland could object. Neutral wax went over the archive clasps. Hester sat with her blackthorn stick across her knees, fury making her look less frail than any crown. Roland's face settled into patience. Old books decay. Stamps fade. A missing mark does not create a right to lifetime support after remarriage. No, Winnifred said. A missing mark creates a question. We answer it with other records. She began with dates. Marilla's first household had completed contribution credit 9 years earlier, before widowhood, before remarriage, before Thomas the carpenter shared her roof. Bessie Alder's laundry account showed premium substitutions when her husband's lungs failed. Corinne Pike's Cooper receipts listed pension copper paid during years she also kept the household accounts. Then came the side book Hester had carried beneath her shawl. Roland's eyes moved to it too quickly. It is not an official register, he said. It is a contribution collector's witness book, Winnifred answered. It does not grant benefits. It confirms how official payments were made. The pages smelled of dust, soap, and old kitchens. Hester's script named women who had washed, mended, nursed, boarded laborers, kept shop accounts, and sold eggs so premiums could be paid under a husband's household name. The survivor fund had counted the money. The law had not counted the women's work. Bessie Alder stared at the entry beside her name. My hands paid when his breath could not. Winnifred wrote that sentence in the margin of her working notes, not as poetry but as evidence of labor. Witness? An old workshop neighbor, Mara Dean, had waited near the door in a patched cloak. She came forward wringing nothing, because her hands were steady. I saw Bessie carry laundry tubs past midnight. The collector came every fourth Friday. When her man couldn't stand, Bessie paid. Roland exhaled. Sympathetic neighbors cannot rewrite pension law. No, Winnifred said, but they can show the household whose contributions you call his alone was not maintained by him alone. Casimir stood beside the uncovered window, keeping the distance Winnifred had required. Silver blue light ringed his eyes, though no token moved. Why was unpaid labor excluded from the remarriage files? Because need is easier to judge if labor disappears, Winnifred said. The words struck him. He looked at Marilla's token, then at the scar along his right wrist. For a moment the king's danger turned inward. I believed fell because I had seen dependent fraud, he said. A widower once claimed 3 households after one death. He used children's names, old rent rooms, and forged transfer tokens. The fund nearly closed to true dependents. Winnifred did not soften her voice. So you feared duplicate households and let remarriage become proof of replacement. Yes. He did not ask her to forgive the logic. He did not ask her to admire the wound that made it. That restraint made the admission useful instead of another demand. Roland seized the opening. Exactly, Majesty. If remarried beneficiaries continue receiving full survivor payments, unmarried widows with no new shelter suffer. The policy protects the poorest women from double-supported households. Corinne Pike lifted her rent notice. My new shelter has arrears. No statement without counsel, Winnifred said, but she placed the notice beside Corinne's token registration. They reviewed the registrations next. Each silver token had been registered to the woman by name after the first spouse's death, not to the old address. Marilla Wynne, Bessie Alder, Corinne Pike. The token records did not say until loneliness ends. They did not say payable only while grief remains visible. They said beneficiary. Winnifred pulled the forfeiture files back into the light. The missing contribution stamps had created the appearance of incomplete value. The new household declarations had created the appearance of voluntary surrender. Together, they made Roland's claim sound merciful. Stop questionable payments, protect poorer widows. But the reserve schedules changed the meaning. Each forfeited benefit carried a small black crescent mark near the arrears line. At first, Winnifred thought it meant routine remarriage closure. Then she found the same mark on Marilla's file, dated between the notice at first bell and the official registrar entry at second. Bessie's mark appeared before her appeal instructions were posted. Corinne's appeared before counsel could review the supposed surrender. Winnifred laid 6 files side by side. Marilla, Bessie, Corinne, Elsbeth Rowe, Nella Ward, and Patience Crow. Different husbands, different trades, different remarriage dates. Same completed contribution histories. Same beneficiary token registration. Same missing final stamp. And the same black crescent routing mark. Casimir leaned forward, stopping short of the table line. What does it route? Winnifred turned the reserve schedule toward him. Forfeited arrears into ministerial reserve. Roland's patient expression hardened. Before appeal? Casimir asked. Winnifred checked each date once more because accusation required mercy's opposite, accuracy. Before any appeal window opened, she said. Outside the chamber, a silver token began ringing from inside the closed evidence cupboard. The ringing token changed every face in the chamber. Roland moved first, which told Winnifred more than his objections had. That cupboard holds impounded exhibits, he said, reaching for the evidence key at his waist. A loose token may react to any widow nearby. Winnifred stepped between him and the door. Then it waits for neutral witness. Casimir did not cross her line. Registrar Oren, Hester Vale, and Mara Dean will witness. Minister Fell, give the key to the clerk. Roland smiled thinly. Your Majesty forgets that Mistress Saye is suspended. And you forget the cupboard is ringing. The token struck the wood again, bright and furious. Outside the chamber, women who had waited through hours of dates and shame pressed closer. Marilla held her own token to her chest. Bessie's cracked hands curled around her laundry account. Corinne kept one finger on her rent notice, as if paper could hold a roof over her. The neutral clerk opened the cupboard. A silver pension token spun inside a sealed evidence pouch, knocking toward the door. Its label read Elsbeth Rowe, forfeited after remarriage, voluntary surrender pending. No Elsbeth stood in the chamber. Winnifred looked through the outer doorway and found a small woman with a bruised cheekbone lowering her face behind a black shawl. Elsbeth Rowe? Winnifred asked. The woman flinched. I came only to listen. The token tore the pouch seam and rolled across the floor, past Roland, past Casimir, past the line of chairs, and stopped at Elsbeth's worn boots. A sound went through the widows, not wonder. Recognition. Roland's voice rose. That woman's file includes a new household support declaration. Elsbeth whispered, My second husband signed what I could not read. He said I had to prove I was grateful. Winnifred lifted a hand before the story could be taken from her. No more without counsel. But the harm had already entered the room. Casimir saw it. Everyone saw him see it. By sunset, Roland answered with print. Notices appeared at the registry, the market gate, and Street Ellion's wall. Remarried claimants endanger poor widows. Suspended examiner Saye urges double collection. Any beneficiary withholding household support forms risks, fraud review, and delayed appeal. The notice did not mention ministerial reserve. It did not mention Elsbeth's cheek. It mentioned unmarried widows, often enough to turn suffering women against one another. The effect was immediate. Marilla's apothecary refused credit until her status cleared. Bessie's coal cellar demanded coin. Corinne's landlord sent a boy to measure her room for new tenants. Elsbeth would not go home. Winnifred gathered them in the vestry again, but now fear sat with them at the table. Her proof was stronger and their lives were less safe. Casimir came before dusk and stopped in the doorway. He had read the notices. His beauty looked harsher under guilt, all silver blue eyes and controlled anger he had no right to spend carelessly. "I can place royal guards at the vestry," he said. "No," Winnifred answered. "That makes widows look detained or dangerous." "Then tell me what protection does not become another cage." The question cut through her exhaustion because it did not ask to be praised. It asked to be useful. Clinic credit for medicine through named physicians, not through your household. Rent stays through parish trustees, not pension clerks. Counsel before any interview. Written notice that consulting me cannot delay appeal priority, and no guards inside this room unless a woman asks. Casimir turned to his scribe. "Write it." Roland arrived while the ink was wet, carrying a packet tied with blue cord. "Before your majesty empties the treasury for remarried women with new husbands, perhaps examine what Mistress Saye protects." Inside were more new household support declarations. Better ones. They carried smudged thumb marks, witness initials, even stains where vestry dust might have clung. Merla's looked shaken but plausible. Corinne's form described her new room accurately. Elsbeth's included her husband's statement that she surrendered willingly. Winnifred's stomach went cold. Roland had listened to every weakness she identified and improved the lie. Casimir reached toward the packet, then stopped before her hand rose. That restraint no longer warmed trust. It reminded her how much damage his ruling had given Roland time to learn. "Chain challenge," Winnifred said. "New packet, no council notices, no independent witness schedule, no explanation of rights, improved after today's objections, and presented by the office that profits from forfeiture." Roland tilted his head. "Or, the women lied because you taught them how." Myrla began to cry. Winnifred did not comfort her first. She recorded the time, the packet cord, the seal, the exact accusation. Comfort without record would leave Merla alone later. Then Roland placed the final notice on the table. Emergency absorption of forfeited arrears into ministerial reserve, Dawn Bell. Bessie stared at it. "That is our winter money." Casimir's voice hardened. "I did not authorize emergency absorption. Your ruling authorizes remarriage forfeiture," Roland said. "Reserve transfer follows policy, once fraud risk is unresolved." Winnifred read the batch numbers beside the scheduled reserve entry. Merla, Bessie, Corinne, Elsbeth, Nella, Patience. At dawn, their earned arrears would not merely remain unpaid. Their lost support would become proof the ministry had saved the fund. Dawn had not broken when Roland Fell ordered the pension tokens moved. Winnifred reached the pension hall with Hester Vale, Registrar Oren, Mara Dean, and 6 women whose arrears were scheduled to vanish into ministerial reserve. The front doors were barred from within. Through the high windows, she saw clerks carrying velvet token trays toward the reserve room. Merla's hand tightened around her new household key. "They are taking the tokens before the test." Roland appeared on the inner stair, dressed as if theft were morning discipline. Impounded evidence cannot remain in the custody of beneficiaries encouraged toward fraud by a suspended examiner. Casimir came from the opposite arch without guards, hair damp from haste, royal coat open at the throat where the silver crescent mark glowed hard. "Unlock the hall," Roland bowed. "Your Majesty's own ruling requires reserve absorption when remarriage support is unresolved and fraud risk remains. Interference now endangers unmarried widows across Thornmere." One clerk disappeared through the reserve room door with the first tray. The lock fell behind him. Winnifred felt the loss pass through the women like cold water. The tray held Nella Ward's token, Patience Crow's, and at least 3 she had not yet matched to witnesses. Once absorbed, their arrears would become an accounting victory, not an unpaid debt. Casimir looked at Winnifred instead of at the door. He had learned that power reaching too quickly could trample proof. What can be stopped without taking your case from you? Remove royal guards from token custody, she said. Open the outer doors to public witness. Have the reserve clock read aloud. Seal the reserve room against further absorption, not against review. And write that your ruling allowed earned survivor benefits to be treated as need-based charity before independent appeal. His eyes flashed silver blue. Scribe. The scribe wrote while the women listened. Casimir spoke each word as Winnifred had given it, then added his own name, title, and responsibility. It was not absolution, it was a tool. Roland's patience cracked. Mistress Saye has been suspended. By the office under review, Casimir said. The outer doors opened. Widows, neighbors, clerks, apprentices, and spouses gathered on the pension steps. No one knelt. Winnifred wanted them standing. Inside, the original contribution books had been removed from the archive shelves. Only dust lines and fresh scrape marks remained. Hester Vale swore softly. He moved the books. No, Winnifred said, though her chest tightened. He moved one proof. The contaminated declarations were useless. The originals were gone. One tray had crossed into reserve before witness glass. Roland had forced serious harm into the institution's own language. So Winnifred abandoned the archive. Bring the thresholds, she said. For a moment, even Casimir looked uncertain. Winnifred pointed to the registry doors, the wedding arch, the side entrance where remarried widows filed notices, and the pension hall steps. If the ministry says remarriage creates a new household that ends the benefit, we test the token at the new threshold. Beneficiary held tokens first. Impounded tokens under neutral witness if the court clerk can open them. Contribution proof from collectors and witnesses. Reserve copies from any clerk brave enough to show them. Roland laughed. You intend to replace pension law with coins rolling across doorways? I intend to show where your law pretended earned value stopped. The moon still hung pale over the western roof. Marla stood at the wedding threshold with her token, forfeiture notice, contribution stubs, and apothecary bill. Winnifred addressed the crowd before Silver could distract them. A moon pension token proves one narrow thing. It can reveal that a remarried woman remains the registered beneficiary of value completed before remarriage. It cannot calculate arrears, prove motive, decide voluntary transfer, prove love, or open a vault. Human records and witnesses must do the rest. She set Marila's forfeiture notice beside the threshold. The token warmed in Marila's palm, rang once, dropped, and rolled over the line to rest against her wedding shoe. Bessie's token followed across a second threshold marked with her laundry account and Hester's side book. Corinne's rolled past her rent notice. Elsbeth's, released from a sealed evidence pouch by the neutral clerk, spun hard toward her worn boots, while her new household declaration lay unanswered beside counsel's empty chair. Mara Dean lifted her hand. I saw Bessie pay premiums with laundry money when her husband could not breathe. Hester raised the side book. Completed contribution before remarriage. Completed before these forfeitures. Registrar Oren held Marila's record. Forfeiture notice dated before official remarriage entry. Each human voice closed a door Roland had left open. Then a junior reserve clerk stepped from the crowd, shaking so hard the paper in her hands snapped. Ministerial reserve schedule, she said. Black crescent marks routed arrears before appeal notices posted. Roland turned on her. You will lose your position. She may stand beside me, Casimir said, still at the arch, still not between Winnifred and the evidence. His royal wolf shadow flowed along the steps, midnight black with a silver-blue mane, lowering beside the threshold tokens. It watched their paths. It touched nothing. The reserve room door began ringing. Not one token. Several. The sound built behind the wood, bright and trapped, each strike aimed toward the women gathered outside. Roland's face went gray with calculation. If those tokens are released on spectacle, every remarriage forfeiture in Thornmere will be challenged. Winnifred looked at Merla, Bessie, Corinne, Elspeth, and the women whose names she had not yet learned. Then every woman punished for remarrying deserves a door and a witness, she said. Inside the locked reserve room, a silver token rolled hard enough to split the lower seam of the door. The split in the reserve room door made the pension hall go silent. Winnifred raised her hand before fear could become a rush. No one opens that door until the seal, lock, and witness line are recorded. The token struck again. Silver light bled through the crack and ran across the floorboards toward Merla's wedding shoes. Roland Fell spoke sharply. Reserve property belongs to the ministry until lawful appeal. Then the ministry can endure lawful witnesses, Winnifred said. Casimir did not step past her. Court clerk, read the reserve seal. Registrar Oren, mark the time. Hestervale, stand where you can see the threshold. The neutral clerk broke the wax with shaking fingers. When the door opened, 6 tokens rolled from the darkness as if released from a held breath. They did not scatter. Each turned toward a woman on the steps. Nella Ward, Patience Crow, a baker's widow named Lavinia Hart, 2 women, Winnifred knew only by their frightened faces, and Elsbeth Rowe, whose token had been impounded twice. One token struck Patience's hem and lay still. Patience covered her mouth. They told me my remarriage made my first house finished. Winnifred kept her voice steady for the crowd. The token proves only registered beneficiary and completed pre-remarriage value. Now we prove the handling. She began with Nella Ward because Roland had always used the sickest women last, when rooms were tired. Nella's contribution stubs showed 15 completed years before her husband died. Hester's side book named Nella's poultry earnings as premium money during the fever winter. Registrar Oren confirmed the remarriage entry date. The forfeiture notice was stamped the day before it. Predated, Winnifred said. The junior reserve clerk, trembling beside Casimir's scribe, held up the black crescent schedule. Routed to reserve before appeal notice posted. Roland's face hardened. Preliminary routing protects solvency. Preliminary theft protects itself, Maradine said from the witness line. Winnifred moved to Patience. Token registration. Patience Crow by name. Death date. 3 years before remarriage. Final contribution. Complete. New household declaration. Signed with a thumb mark after a notice labeled address correction. Counsel. None. Appeal clock. Expired before delivery. Each line struck the policy like a hammer. Roland tried to pull the crowd toward fear. Every coin restored here is a coin taken from a widow with no second husband. Bessie Alder lifted her cracked hands. My second husband has debts. My first house paid. I paid. Winnifred did not let the inquiry become pain against pain. Unmarried widows are not protected by stealing earned benefits from remarried ones. Show the reserve account. The junior clerk unfolded the ledger copy. Reserve totals rose after each remarriage forfeiture. Administrator allowances rose next. No corresponding transfer appeared to unmarried widows' emergency support. Instead, a column called Household Reassessment had paid auditors to close files already marked by the black crescent. A murmur spread through the hall. Casimir's jaw tightened, but he spoke to the people, not to Winnifred. My ruling accepted remarriage as proof of support. I allowed earned survivor value to be judged as need-based charity. A she. And under that judgment, women standing here lost medicine, rent, coal, appeal time, and legal name. The fault of that authority is mine. Roland snapped. Majesty, if you confess institutional error before full board review, Thornmere's pension confidence will collapse. It should collapse where it depends on women disappearing. That was the break. Clerks who had feared Roland began naming hidden shelves. One described token pouches moved before appeals. Another admitted black crescent marks meant reserve absorption priority. The junior clerk pointed to ministerial allowance columns that increased after forfeiture batches. Registrar Orrin allayed appeal copies from his satchel, sent to his office for posting after the deadlines had passed. Hester named the final contribution stamps from memory, and a retired apprentice confirmed Roland's archive clerks had scraped several waxed page corners after the policy changed. Roland stepped backward. Casimir's midnight wolf shadow lowered across the floor, silver blue mane bright, not touching him, not blocking him, only making retreat visible. Winnifred reached the decisive combination. Public token tests show these women remained registered beneficiaries of completed pre-remarriage value. Contribution dates and Hester's testimony show the value was earned before remarriage. Labor witnesses show the first households were sustained by women's unpaid work. Predated notices and delayed appeals show forfeiture was prepared before lawful challenge. Reserve ledgers show arrears were routed to ministerial profit, not vulnerable widows. Misleading declarations show surrender was presumed without informed choice. She turned to Casimir. This is not protection. It is remarriage punishment. Casimir removed the silver clasp chain that carried his pension ruling authority and placed it on the threshold table beside the tokens. The sound was small. The cost was not. Roland Fell is removed from pension custody, he said. His reserve accounts are frozen under neutral witness. All remarriage forfeitures are suspended. Benefits are restored, pending review. Arrears, interest, medical loss, rent loss, and coal credit will be paid from Royal Reserve if recovered funds lag. The remarriage penalty is abolished from this hour. Beneficiary control replaces presumed surrender. Women began crying then, not because everything was repaired, but because the punishment had finally been named by the power that made it law. Casimir looked at Winnifred from across the table. I will not ask you to forgive a ruling I have only begun to repair. Good, she said. Her hands shook once, then steadied. Repair has begun, but personal trust cannot be discussed until every beneficiary has direct control over continuation, transfer, or division, with counsel, without husband, minister, family, or crown answering for her. He bowed his head. Then that is the next order. Behind them, another locked token pouch split open, and silver rolled across the threshold toward a woman no register had yet named aloud. By morning, the pension hall had become a place where thresholds meant choice instead of punishment. Winnifred set the first beneficiary control table beside the cracked reserve room door, because shame belonged where policy had hidden it. Neutral clerks copied token numbers. Registrar Orrin marked appeal clocks from the hour women received counsel, not from the hour Roland Fell's office claimed notice. Hester Vale sat with the contribution sidebook open under glass, naming completed value when old registers tried to forget. No ministerial clerk touched a token alone. Marla Wynne came first. Blue wedding dress creased from a night without sleep. New household key tied to her wrist, so no one could say remarriage had made her careless. Her silver token rested beside the apothecary bill. Do I have to choose my new husband or the benefit? She asked. No, Winnifred said. You choose what happens to value already earned in your name. Continue it to yourself, transfer a portion, divide future payment by written consent, challenge any prior surrender, or request arrears and medical loss first. Counsel explains each choice. No husband, minister, family, or crown answers for you. Marla closed her eyes. Medicine first, then continuation. Winnifred recorded it as instruction, not gratitude. Bessie Alder chose coal credit, arrears, and recognition of laundry labor in her household record. Corinne Pike chose rent loss review before deciding whether to divide anything with her new household. Elsbeth Rowe asked that no support declaration signed through fear be treated as consent until she met counsel alone. Nella Ward wanted arrears paid directly to her name. Patience Crow chose to delay division until her own account was opened. One by one, the forms became smaller than the women. Casimir stood beyond the threshold without his silver clasp chain. Thornmere saw its king stripped of the authority he had misused, waiting where Winnifred had placed him. He signed orders only after she and counsel confirmed the language: remarriage, forfeiture abolished, arrears restored with interest, medical, rent, and coal losses paid from royal reserve if frozen funds lagged. Ministerial reserves transferred to independent oversight. Every ruling under his penalty policy audited. No surrender valid without separate counsel and beneficiary held copy. He signed the hardest order last. Recorded under Casimir Thorn, Wolf King. Survivor benefits wrongfully converted from earned value into need-based charity by royal ruling. When he returned the pen, his right wrist scar showed above the cuff. Leave it under my name. It stays there, Winnifred said. Good. Roland's system came apart in practical pieces. Reserve locks were replaced. Black crescent routing marks were banned. Contribution books were photographed under witness glass. Token pouches required 2 neutral signatures. Household labor could no longer be erased from contribution histories. Appeal notices had to be handed to beneficiaries and counsel, with time beginning at receipt. Any token that crossed a threshold reopened review, but the token did not rule alone. Dates, witnesses, labor, contribution marks, and choice finished the proof. By dusk, Marilla's medicine was paid, Bessie's coal was delivered. Corinne kept her room. Elsbeth entered a separate counsel appointment through a door her husband did not control. Nella and Patience chose continuation pending arrears review. Winnifred filed her suspension notice as evidence. She did not burn it. Burned paper taught nothing. She also filed Casimir's written responsibility beside it, not to humiliate him, but to make the next clerk pause before calling punishment order. Only after the first set of beneficiary control forms was complete did Casimir send a written request through the restored office. One private conversation Don de Danse recorded. No carriage, no garden, no court musician pretending repair had become romance. She allowed 10 minutes in the empty threshold room. Casimir entered without guards, seal chain, or prepared apology. The first reserve transfer is complete. Independent oversight holds custody. If more punished widows appear, the benefit follows their earned value before my reputation is defended. That is the beginning of an answer, Winnifred said. And personally? He asked. Quiet enough that the clerk outside could not mistake it for pressure. She looked at him, at the dangerous beauty, and the cost finally attached to it. Wanting him did not frighten her. Forgetting the women would have. One conversation, she said. This one. After every woman in the first penalty list receives counsel and a chosen control form, you may request another. I decide where, when, and how far. Casimir bowed. At your choice. Outside, moonlight touched the registry steps. Silver pension tokens rested beside women's new doors, following earned value without chaining any widow to grief.